welcome back to my channel. I'm Deanna and you're watching ORCHID. Today we are going to do some repotting. So I've made a video recently where I've gone through my collection and picked out the orchids, the many orchids which need repotting for various reasons. One group of orchids that desperately need repotting is the mottled leaf paphs, and I thought I would bring you along for the ride. So these are my mottled leaf paphiopedilums, but I'm also going to repot a couple of the green leaf paphiopedilums back there, and I've got a couple of random phals because, well, I'm a glutton for punishment and I love to give myself more work. The main reason that I am repotting these paphiopedilums is because some of them have gone downhill. Historically, like over the last 2 years, I've done very well with the mottled paphiopedilums. They seem to really like the growth space that they're in. They like the conditions that they're in, but recently they have begun to decline and I'm not entirely sure of the reason. So these would have all been repotted about 18 months ago. And at the time I used a media which did consist of some orchiata bark, but also not the best quality sphagnum, and I do believe that some of it's beginning to degrade now, and when it degrades the medium goes a little bit acidic and the orchids don't do as well. The other thing is that I do know that some of the roots may have died off, and I'm not entirely sure of the reason for that. It may have to do with the medium, but it may have to do with other factors as well. So in particular, this one is doing pretty poorly. You can see how wobbly that is. This is another one quite loose in the pot there, and it just means it's not stabilized by the roots, and because they were doing well previously, it does mean that some roots have died off. So the reasons that the roots may not be doing so well, we're going to unpot them and have a look and try and decipher that, but I have a few hypotheses, and besides the acidic medium and the quality of the medium, what I do think happens with paphiopedilums is that over time they sort of rise up out of the pot a little bit. And what I mean by that is not that, they grow legs and get taller, but their bottom leaves do shed off, and that exposes their base a little bit. And there does seem to be a little bit of a sweet spot where you should pot your paphiopedilums, and that's so none of the roots are exposed. As you lose the lower leaves, and also over time, you might lose a bit of medium from the top layer as you water and the medium compacts a little bit. Some of the roots may become exposed, and the other thing is the new roots that develop from the base of the orchid may be exposed to air. Now these guys are semi-terrestrial for the most part. Their roots do not like being exposed to air for long periods of time, and they certainly don't grow very well unless they're growing into mediums. So I do think that has a large part to do with whatever's happening here. But anyway, as usual, what I'm going to do is use one or two of them as example orchids, which will repot together, pot up together. However, I'm going to unpot all of them. I'll show you the root systems of all of them, and we will just use one of them as an example, and I'll show you the end products of all of them at the end. So before we begin, let me introduce you to these guys and I'll tell you what they are. This one, you can read it for yourself because it's complicated, but basically it's a red Maudiae type. There's two plants in here, and one of them, as you can see, is quite loose. The other one's not too bad, but I'll probably separate those out into two new pots. And you can see that there's some new roots trying to come out of there, whether they've died off or whether they're still good. Back here, we've got Paphiopedilum succuculii, which is a species previously doing very well, now really not doing well. You can see how wilty those leaves are. Over here, this one's doing pretty poorly, and it used to be one that was doing really well for me. So this is Paph callosum crossed with Robolenii. So this second growth here actually grew completely in my care, but as you can see, it's probably not connected to the mother plant anymore. So whether I'll pot that up into two separate pots or just keep them potted in the same pot, I'm not too sure yet, but I'll decide when the time comes. This one is Cherry Glace crossed with Ferianum, and we've seen it in flower before. You can see the old flower spike there. I'll put a picture up if I can find it, and it's got a new growth developing there. This one's doing very well, but because I'm already repotting some of them, I might as well repot that one as well. This is Paphiopedilum dillinatii, also doing very well, and it's growing a second little growth there. The last Maudiae is Paphiopedilum green coral, which is an alba or green Maudiae type. It has always done really well, and I've had it since it was quite a small seedling actually, so I would have thought it's just about time for this one to flower, but I am going to repot it. It does have this second growth here, which feels a little bit loose to me, and it has actually just started growing, this new growth. The others, well, we'll have a look at their root systems. So this is Paphiopedilum. This is Paphiopedilum Hung Sheng Eagle, and this one is Paphiopedilum Angel Hair, and those again have just gotten a little bit high in their pots, so that's why I'm going to repot them. Alright, so before we begin, let's sterilize our tools. I always wear gloves when I'm repotting, and I soak some of these cotton makeup pads in rubbing alcohol. So what I'm thinking is that we might actually be able to unpot a few of them together, because Paphiopedilums don't tend to create really extensive root systems, and I'd like to share with you maybe a couple that aren't doing well and a couple that are doing well. Paphiopedilum roots are quite unique. As I said, they're semi-terrestrial, so they're quite unique in appearance. They're brown, usually a little bit fuzzy, but they don't grow a lot of roots, and they grow them quite slowly. So unlike maybe the Phragmopediums, which are also terrestrial, they tend to grow a lot more of an extensive root system. So it's not uncommon for Paphiopedilums just to have like a couple of roots, which also means that if you lose one, then they can go downhill a lot quicker. They certainly don't tend to become big tangled messes like, say, the Oncidium roots. And so what I'm thinking is that these unpottings should actually be fairly uncomplicated and fast, because they don't tangle their roots very much. You don't have to go and pick out as much of the medium. You can just tend to wash it out a little bit more easily. So let's begin with Paphiopedilum succuculea. So this is one that has just become a little bit limp over the past few months, and unfortunately I have known that it's been going downhill for a couple of months and I haven't done anything, so really my bad. But let's have a look at this one. So a little bit of a squeeze of the medium. Let's take it out of the pot. Ugh, gross. I just squirted like some root juices on my shirt. That's really, really gross. This has one viable root, so I'm not sure if you can see very well there, but I've got this as a good root here. It's nice and firm, but the rest of them, can you see? They've gone downhill, and look, I'm not entirely sure why that is, but it is hanging on by a thread. So I'm going to clean this up, and this leaf, this bottom leaf has come off. So yeah, I'm going to give this one a rinse. So as you can see, like, I've hardly had to do anything really to clean it up. I've just got to chop off these dead roots, protect the single root that it has. I'm going to spray it with a little bit of hydrogen peroxide, and we're going to put it to the side and do the next one. So I just want to show you this up close, but this root is firm and it is still viable, but it's actually a little bit soft at the base there, so it's just going to be hanging on by a thread. I've chopped a bit of the stem off because there was about 1 centimetre where there was the old roots hanging off it, and really it needs to be buried to about this level here. So yeah, we'll see. It's looking extremely sad at the moment, and I feel very guilty looking at it. Might not make it through, but we're going to give it a go. Okay, the next one we're going to unpot is Paph callosum crossed with Robelenii, and this is the one that is very loose there. So let's see what's going on. I'm a little scared to look, but let's just do this. Okay, so we've definitely got 2 plants. So one of the growths has completely separated off. This is the mother plant, and it seems to have one good root. It's good to a certain point. So if you can see this root here is soft and mushy and dead. This one is actually nice and firm. However, it gets to this point and it's soft, so I'm going to cut off the soft bit and the dead root. So you can also see the typical sort of fuzzy root appearance of this one. So it is a healthy root, it's just lost a few roots at the top there. We'll be doing the same with that one, giving it a little bit of a wash, putting some hydrogen peroxide. Now this is the other one. Now this is the little growth that came off it. And this actually has some decent roots. So you can even see, let me see if I can show you. There's a growing root tip there. So these roots are actually quite good. This one could probably lose that little root. This one's a little bit soft at the end, so we can just chop that off. There we go. So yeah, we're gonna give these guys a bit of a rinse, and I'm still not sure whether I'm gonna pot it together or separately. Probably separately, even though it's gonna be twice as much work. I'm still thinking about it. And I'll just unpot one more with you guys, but this one is the cherry glace crossed with Ferianum. This is the one that has recently flowered, just so I can share the unpotting of like one decent one with you. But I'm pretty sure this will have a very good root system. It's just flowered, it's happily pushing out another growth, and well, I can definitely see a couple of viable roots in there at least. So let's have a look. And yes, as suspected, we've got quite a few good roots there. You can see this one's papery and dead, just in the center there, but we've got these other ones which are quite nice. This one's been resting up against the pot. You can see it's flat, but it's still got the little typical fuzzy covering on it. Alright guys, well I am going to unpot the rest, but I'll come back and show you all of the plants unpotted and show you their root systems. Okay everyone, well all the unpottings are done, so I thought I would show you the root systems of these guys. And as suspected, the one that's probably doing the worst is this first one that I unpotted, and that is paphs. It is probably the one that's also the least likely to survive. So it does have this single root, but it is very precariously hanging on there. The next one we'll move on to is the two red Maudiaes, which aren't doing too badly. This one's got 3 roots. So as I mentioned before, even though it doesn't look like much, paphiopedilums actually don't produce a massive root system. So if it can keep these roots, these 3 roots will be enough for it to survive very well. And this is the other red Maudiae. So if you remember, they were both potted together, but I'm going to separate them and put them into 2 different pots. I'm just trying to move this into some better lighting, but I'm not sure if you can see, so it's losing this leaf here. And I've noticed this with a couple of others that I'll show you as well, but you can see some root nubbins, but it's sort of trying to bring out some new roots, and I'm not sure how successfully it's doing that because this entire section of the plant has been sitting above the media, and I think that's why this section was a little bit loose in the pot. So I think that's quite interesting, unlike say the Phalaenopsis, which, you know, they grow their roots and then they push through the leaves, and often the leaves stay quite intact. I've noticed that when the new roots try and push through the leaves, they do die off on the Paphiopedilums. So let's have a look at some of the others. This one here is Paph green coral, and it's split into 2 plants now. So I did mention that this second little growth was a bit loose, and yeah, it wasn't connected to the mother plant anymore. Sorry, just trying to get better light there, but can you also see on this section of the plant that root? I'm not sure if it's going to make it. It's sort of brown now, but it's pushed this leaf out of the way. This is what I kind of mean by the fact that the Paphiopedilums sort of lift in their pots a little bit. The point at which the roots emerge rises above the media over time, which is also a reason why I think they need maybe more frequent repotting than other orchids. Even other semi-terrestrials, I think a yearly repotting is probably required for them for this reason alone, unless you can keep topping up the media, which might be fine as well. But I guess in nature, you know, because they are semi-terrestrial, they're going to get a lot of the leaf litter and detritus build up around their root systems. So I guess that's what prevents this from happening in nature. That the other side has retained a pretty good root system, but yeah, I might pot this separately, see if it establishes, and I might be able to sell it or give it away in the future. This one here is doing great. This one is cherry glace crossed with Fairyannum, which we unpotted together. It's got a nice root system there. You can see another little growth emerging there. And of course, this Paph callosum crossed with Robilenii, which is broken into 2 pieces now, and I think I will pot them up separately. The second piece seems to have an even better root system than the mother plant, so we'll see how they progress, but I'll put them in different pots. In terms of the green leaf paphs, one of them's not doing fantastic. That's Paphiopedilum, and you can actually see it's the upper roots that have deteriorated, and it's still got this root that's emerged from lower down that's intact. And Paph Hungsheng Eel is doing pretty well actually, and Paph Angel Hair, here's another one with a root emerging there, and you can see that that leaf is dying back while that root's emerging. Yeah, and of course there's the 2 phals which were in the sphagnum, which will just be potted up again. Alright guys, so I'm going to go set up for repotting these guys, and I'll take you along to repot one of them. I don't think it matters too much which one. Alright guys, well I'll start repotting now, and I will bring you guys along for one of them. This is my Delanatii, and unfortunately a little growth has fallen off. Might be able to see that the base of the root isn't really well intact anyway, so unfortunately there's no point in potting that one up. It'll be okay otherwise, I think. And this one does seem to have a couple of little root nubbins at the bottom, so I think it was just that the base of this was exposed a bit too much. It's getting upgraded 1 pot size, and I've learnt a few things along the way with these Maudiaes, but they really hate drying out, especially in hot, dry conditions. So they prefer to be evenly moist. They might be able to tolerate drying out for a day, maybe 2, but they really don't like drying out for long periods of time. And so I think being in a bigger pot will help prevent that, and I think it'll do better in my climate to be in a slightly bigger pot than too small and drying out too quickly and me not being able to meet its watering needs. So I'm going to line this pot with some large bark. In the past I have lined my pots with leca, and I still do that for the cattleyas, but I just find that some roots are a little bit more sensitive than others to leca, either being cold or too dry, and I find that Paphiopedilums are one of them. I'm not using leca anymore in my Paphiopedilum mixes, and that's not to say it won't work for other people. It's just the way I keep my orchids. They do dry out sometimes, and the green leaf ones are kept out in the cold, and I just don't think they react to the leca very well in those conditions. Alright, so I've lined my pot with some large Orchiata bark, and it's not my largest one, it's the one that's about 15 to 18 millimeters, and I have pre-soaked my Paphiopedilum roots, and I really highly recommend that you don't repot Paphiopedilums while their roots are dry. They are so brittle and so prone to breaking, especially because there's usually so few of them that if you break a root, it's really liable to just rot off. So soaking them will just give them some extra pliability, make them a little less prone to breaking. The other thing is, my plan is to pot up to around that point where the bottom 2 leaves overlap. That's my general little rule that I follow when I'm potting up Paphiopedilums, and they do talk about a bit of a sweet spot, and that tends to work for me. But as I've discovered through my learning process, that level changes as the leaves drop off. I've got my mix here with my nice fluffy good quality sphagnum, and there's a premix underneath of bark, charcoal and perlite. And I've given it a bit of a mix, but this is really nice sphagnum. It's really long fibers, so I haven't actually broken it up too much. And I might just put a little bit down the bottom there, over that bark. So I'm going to place the Paphiopedilum into the spot where I'd like it to sit, so in the center, and we're going to start filling. Because there's so few roots normally, you don't have to be so tedious with getting all the little bits of bark and stuff between the roots. They just kind of fall into place, especially if you're using small bark. And then this sphagnum is just so nice and fluffy that even if you push down a little bit, it kind of absorbs a lot of that pressure. But yeah, you want to be quite careful when you're repotting the Paphiopedilums and quite gentle on the roots. The root growth is just not as vigorous as a lot of other orchids. Also gently lift the leaves and just make sure that you've got media under the axis of the leaf. Alright guys, and there we have it. This is the Paphiopedilum dillanatii repotted, and there's just one more step that I take when I repot all my orchids, and that's to give it a little bit of a soak in Super Thrive. Alright guys, so this one is repotted, and you can sort of see the level that I go to with the repotting. It's sitting fairly low, but again, as we've discovered through this whole process, I am finding that as the lower leaves drop, the level that you need the media to be at rises. So I've realized that I haven't ever shown you guys the last step in my repotting, but I do this with all my orchids. I soak them in some Super Thrive. I think seaweed would probably just do the same thing. I'm not sure that Super Thrive actually has that many benefits over just regular kelp or seaweed. But anyway, I have a bottle of Super Thrive that I got for free, so I use it. Anyway, there's about a capful mixed into this 1.5 litre watering can, and I just pop it into a little decorative container and I fill it. So I'll leave this to soak maybe for like half an hour. And I'll do this with every single orchid that I repot. Okay everyone, it's the next day and I have finished my repotting, and let me tell you, that was an intense evening of repotting. You can see I have 14 pots, and I definitely didn't start out with that many. 2 of them split, so I've put them in separate pots, and then one of them was 2 plants anyway, that red Maudiae, so they are in 2 separate pots. But let's have a little look at them. So the dillanatii is back there that we repotted together, and which one's looking really sad? This is the Succuculii, looking really sad, so we'll just see how it goes. I'm willing to just see if it takes to the repotting and it improves and starts to grow any new roots. Very limp and has very little reserves, like it just may not be able to produce the roots in time to save itself, so we will see. But the rest of them hopefully should do okay. Nice fresh media, the sphagnum's really good quality. You can see the 2 phals here, and even though this is not a phal repotting video, I still use lacquer at the bottom of these pots. I do like the water to drain really well through the phals, and I use a much larger bark mix. I use like a medium bark mix with sphagnum for those. But yeah, hopefully they do okay, and I hope you guys enjoyed this repotting video. Please give it a thumbs up if you liked it, and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more orchid videos. Hope you guys have a great week, and happy growing until I see you next time. Bye!